So our last facial feature is the eyeball, and I chose the eye last because it is the most difficult, but the one that the students like the best. So when I start with the eyeball, I'm always considering, well, actually in any facial feature, I'm always considering the physiology of what it is that I'm drawing. So in order to make it look three-dimensional, I'm going to draw this eyeball. And it starts with a circle on your paper, but we know that the eyeball is spherical. It's three-dimensional. So it goes from this circle, and we will erase highlights and reflected light and leave in shadows and middle values to give it a three-dimensional form. But I start with the sphere because that's the structure that's underneath the flesh. So here's the eyeball. And then what I'm going to do is I'm looking at this shape right here, and it's kind of this leaf shape, or I like to think of it as a little birdie. So maybe the bird's head right here, its eye right here, and its little beak right here. But it's going to start right about here with this end, like the tail end of the bird, and the flesh wraps around the eyelid, or the eyeball, sorry, the eyelid wraps around the eyeball. So it arches up right over here on the right side with the eyeball looking to the right. And then at the bottom, it's a little bit more rounded, and it comes up right before the eyeball ends, and then makes this little beaky thing, this cute little bird beak right here. And the eyelid itself isn't two-dimensional. It has a thickness to it. Your eyelid has a thickness to it, so it's going to extend just a little beyond the eyeball itself to account for that thickness of the flesh. So when people draw the eyeball in, a lot of times, again, it's your left brain thinking, knowing that the iris itself and the pupil itself is round, so they'll just go ahead and do this circle right there. This is a freaky eyeball. Do not do that. I'm going to take my cotton ball and erase that. Here we have an ellipse, and the ellipse starts from underneath the eyelid, so the eyelid covers part of this pupil and iris. So I'm just going to make this roundish but elliptical, like so. So it's a slender circle, and then the pupil right there. I'm going to fill that in. And then the sides of the pupil, the edges of the pupil, I'm going to darken in. And light is coming from the top, and we've got these beautiful lashes that protect our eye from the light. So I'm going to shade that in. And notice I am not drawing in individual eyelashes. Your brain is an amazing organ, and it will fill in the rest. It will know that there are eyelashes. It'll know that there are millions, not millions, for those of us who aren't so lucky, just maybe 3 or 4 dozen eyelashes. But then I'm going to do maybe just a few individual lashes. Try not to make them uniform. They're random. Some are closer to each other, some are further away, some are thin, some are thick, some curve in different angles. The more uniform you make your lashes, the more unrealistic they're going to look. I see a lot of this. Please don't do that. You're not a burlesque performer, or maybe you are, but in this portrait, in this eyeball, you're not. So I'm going to put that back in. And remember, I'm using that cotton ball to erase my mistakes and put charcoal back in where it belongs. This little bird beak is dark, so I'm going to shade that in. And then I'm going to take a cotton ball and erase the top part of the eyeball and bottom part of the eyeball. So now we just have the eyelid and part of the eyeball exposed. And then again, taking this Q-tip and blending out, making it smooth, nice soft lines or soft shadowed areas. And then the real work of the kneading eraser again. So what you should focus on is getting those highlights, and the highlights or the direct light is going to hit the eyeball where it protrudes from the skull the most. So at the very end, right where this iris is. So I'm going to erase those areas, and look, I'm avoiding this dark area. I don't want to erase that and then have to put it back in later. That's just going to double your work. So get this, and as it goes upwards and the sphere recedes back into the skull, it's getting darker. So my lightest lights are down here towards the bottom, and then they're just gradually going to get less light as I go up underneath the eyelid, which means less pressure. Here also on the white of the eye, I'm going to erase with some pressure, and as I go back towards this corner, the eyeball is going to start receding back into the skull. So guess what? Less pressure, not as light a value, so it starts giving it that illusion of 3-dimension. And then again, as it goes up towards the bottom of the top eyelid, I'm going to ease up on some pressure so that it starts getting darker as we go up. So lightest part I have is right about here. I'm going to go back in there and put some extra little bit of pressure right there. So now we kind of have the start of a 3-dimensional looking eye. And I'm going to get this. I did not draw this in, but there's this fold right here. A lot of us have this fold, and I want to get that in there. And that is more like a line because there's a crease, a very distinct crease that raises up. I'm looking at the distance between here and here, and it's quite a bit thicker here than it is here. It thins out, and then it kind of shades up over here and then curves around. And then I want to erase out this highlight right above the eye. That's again where the eyeball is pushing the flesh outward and then fading it to the right and to the left so that it looks like it's curving around the eye. And then just kind of narrowing that in right there. And then there's this, I'm kneading this eraser into a fine point so I can get these slight little details right here. And then this highlight right here. So again, talking about the thickness of your lid, there's a thickness to it. It's not just 2-dimensional. There's a thickness of the flesh that I'm capturing right there. And then I want to get the rest of the face in. I'm avoiding this because I don't want to have to redraw that and put that back in. And then here, the brow, where it curves back into the skull, it's going to get dark, but right above it, I'm going to erase out that protrusion, that bone protrusion, and I'm going to erase around the eyebrow. So leaving that space for the eye.